Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, Enjoy Your New Hair Color. I'm a hairstylist. End of June, between clients, I decided to run to the gas station to get an energy drink and was hit by a car coming out of the parking lot. My own car was destroyed, the police came and both cars were towed from the scene. I texted my next client, apologizing and telling her that due to a serious accident, I would need to reschedule her appointment. She said she needed her hair done before the 4th of July. I was standing in the street, looking at my car in pieces, on the phone with insurance, fielding questions from the police, and still texted the salon owner, asking if anyone could take my client today. The owner said she'd figure it out and would make sure my client could still be seen. I passed this information on to the client, who said she only wanted me to do it and needed to get in as soon as possible. So in all the jumble, I'm still worried about this client, even if she is the worst. She is a bad client and constantly complains about her hair, demands free changes, and only pays about 70% of the typical cost of her services because she managed to manipulate me into the price point when I was a newer stylist. I see in my schedule that I have absolutely no room to fit her in before the 4th, so I walk back to the salon, after my car was towed away, and just take her anyway. Once I get in, she doesn't ask if I'm okay, doesn't thank me for taking her anyway, but instead launches into a 3-hour-long brag about all the guys who are super into her and how she's dating a business mogul from Newport. The service goes as usual. I finish her hair 3 hours later and am about to take her cape off and send her on her way when suddenly, she has a problem with the color. She says it's too ashy. It's the exact same formula and color I've done on her for years, but today, it's wrong for some reason. Trying to remain cheerful and professional, I tell her that I'll put a new toner on her, no problem. At this point, my grandmother is on my way with my daughter to pick me up. I text my grandmother, saying I'll be a little later. I tone the client again and blow dry her for a second time. The client insists that the color is still too ashy. I explain that the second toner I used is the most golden toner that exists, and there's nothing less ash that I could put on her, except for an opaque, sort of gold pigment. She's clearly just being a jerk. At this point, my grandmother comes into the salon and asks if I'm ready to go. My client is looking at her hair and says, "You need to do something else. I can't leave like this." So my grandmother goes back to wait in the car. I decide to use a very, very gold color and tone it again for the third time. She comes back to the chair and her hair is noticeably less ashy because it's practically orange. She says, "I hate this. I'm going to dinner with the guy from Newport tonight. I liked it better the first time. You need to do something else. Just do it like you did the first time." I pack my stuff up and say, "I've done your hair 3 separate times at this point. As you know, my grandmother and daughter have been outside waiting for me. Unfortunately, there's nothing else I can do, since now there are layers of toner on there and a 4th layer will only make it worse. I hope you have a great week." I took her payment, which she scoffed and forcefully handed to me, and I left. It was maybe not my most professional moment, but I'd been looking for an escape from that client for years, and it was worth it. The next story is called, Not Enough Fries. I had been working at an extremely popular fast food place for about 7 years at the point when this happened. We had an electronic kitchen scale next to the fries station and next to the ice cream machine, to test ourselves every now and then that we don't accidentally make ridiculously large fries or ice creams. The customer pays for 142 grams of fries, so we get money for 142 grams. If a worker has shoved half extra, that's money straight out of the company's pocket, which trickles down to how many work hours we get, and thus our pay, and so on. I've served thousands of customers and bagged thousands of fries, and I've learned to see and feel how big those bags are to be, with a 5-gram margin, and I was quite proud of myself for that. Sometimes when our shift lead wanted to make small inspections and had people weigh the fries or ice creams they've made, just to see if we're on point, they were amazed time and time again. Now, I was serving a customer, like any other. Apparently, he had gotten workers that weren't as precise as me or just didn't care and was used to see fry bags that were crammed full. "Excuse me, but isn't there a tad too little fries here?" "Well, I can weigh it, if you like, to see that we get precisely what you're paying for." "Yes, please." The customer was obviously thinking it's company standard to have it crammed full. Me, in plain sight of the customer, weighing the bag, noticing there were 10 grams too much fries, reading the scale out loud, checking the printed sheet that's next to the fry station, reading that out loud, a bit over 150 grams, let's see, should be 142. Let's fix that. So, I shook out a couple fries, weighed it again, 143 grams. "Close enough, here you go, sir." The customer, looking defeated, said thank you. The third story is called, You Need to Use It. My son had been going to a private Christian school for years until his 7th grade year. He had a science teacher that really should not have been teaching science that year. But it was a private school, so there wasn't much I could do about it unless I changed his school. He had an assignment to do a research paper about something and he picked dinosaurs. He spent hours on the computer, looking up everything he could find. He wrote a pretty great report. He talked about how long ago they lived, how they ate, what might have happened to them, how they became fossils and so on. He created PowerPoints and really did it up. It was his first report for this teacher and he wanted to give a good impression. But he came home crying. This was a kid who, when he found out I had cancer, just looked at me and said we'll get through this when he was just 7. If a kid would call him a name, it wouldn't faze him in the least. For him to be this upset, something had to be really wrong. The teacher had given him an F because the Bible says the earth is only 4,000 years old. And if the Bible didn't mention dinosaurs, they couldn't have existed. And in the future, instead of going to fancy places like Scientific America, he should open his Bible. I felt really bad for him and started looking for new schools right away, but it was hard finding one in the area that would work for my schedule and for his. In the meantime of looking, he ended up just not trying in science. The class spent so much time on what the Bible said and never adventured out. The teacher made it very clear that the only scientific truth was between those pages. The 7th grade is a magical time. It is the time that most people start sexual education. This school was no different, and that science teacher was also tasked with teaching it. As you can guess, he only preached abstinence as the only form of birth control. He talked about other contraceptives but told them that they were unreliable and if they used them, they would get a disease or worse, get pregnant. The only way to avoid getting pregnant, they would have to abstain from it. My son was kind of cheeky, so he asked him once that if he would do it with a man and used a condom, could he avoid getting someone pregnant that way? Of course, he got sent to the principal's office. So he played it off that he was curious about if it could keep someone from getting pregnant. The principal sent him back to the teacher but gave the teacher strict instructions to teach my son about the horror the Bible foretold for making it with a man. When I heard this, I hit the roof. But my son seemed unusually calm and he told me that he was fine. The teacher, after talking to him, had given him the assignment to find scientific reasons why abstaining from sex is the only way to avoid both diseases and pregnancy. I told him he didn't have to do that and I would talk to the teacher. But he told me he wanted to. I said okay and went about continuing to look for a new school. That next day, I get called to the principal's office. My son and the teacher were there for me. The teacher is red-faced and mad. The principal looks upset too, but my son is just happy as can be. The teacher explains that my son used the assignment to make a mockery of the Bible. I asked him what he meant. He says that he came back and said that scientifically it is proven that abstinence is not 100% because according to the Bible, Mary never had done it but became pregnant. So while abstinence can keep you from getting diseases, it cannot guarantee you won't get pregnant. When the teacher told him he couldn't use the Bible because the birth of Jesus was a miracle, he had brought up his dinosaur paper that the teacher had told him to use the Bible in the future. He even brought the paper with him. I was never more proud of him and he of course was given an F for the assignment and the principal said he would not be welcomed back if he couldn't stop causing a problem. I asked the principal what he expected my son to do. He was told to use the Bible and when he did, he got in trouble. He had no answer other than to stammer that my son knew what the teacher wanted. Luckily, he was out of that school by the end of the 9 weeks, but for the time period, I told him he didn't have to do anything in the class. The last story is called Fury of a Teenager. This story happened over many years. Let's start at the end of the 90s. Growing up, my family ran a business dealing with water and wastewater pumps. By the time I was in high school, I worked for them outside of school as needed, and I'd grown up around the industry. At the time of this story, I was 16, maybe 17. I got a few funny looks out in the field sometimes but normally wasn't a problem. This time, however, it was. Many sales they make are bids. You go to the Builders Exchange, which is basically a library for plans and blueprints. You pull the plans, get to the part applicable to you, and see what they want or need. Then you submit a price you think will win you the job. Many times the plans will actually specify a model that meets their needs, in which case you bid that or a comparable one. Other times, they will give specifications and selection and matching is up to you, going through books and software for curves. This time was the former. The job is an expansion of the city plant. The engineer had specified a model of pump he wanted, and I'd matched its specifications. Put in a submittal for approval on the substitution as required. It gets approved and we are cleared to enter a bid. We proceed forward putting together the bid. At one point, I have the plans in front of me and I'm looking at the drawings. I don't like what I'm seeing, which is a lot of pipes and a lot of distance. I check and recheck and come up with the same result. The total of how far you're pumping, calculated by distance and including losses from the pipe, is too much for the pump that was specified. This puts the pump way outside the curve and it's going to be deep into overload. I used my corrected numbers and found a proper match, but not only was it significantly more expensive, but physically different and would require large revisions. So I put together a revised submittal with the numbers I ran and the recommended pump. It included the math from the drawings and the curves. I faxed it over to the engineer's office, then I called him. It did not go well. Not only did he not listen to me, but he was also more than happy to lecture me. How dare I, a kid, tell him how to do his job? No, he would not accept any revisions or submittals. I had no idea what I was talking about and I, personally, was no longer to have contact on this project. He did not use nice words. This couldn't stand, it was going to cause serious problems down the line. So I did the only thing I could think of. I found the contact for city planning and told him. I made it about 3 minutes into trying to explain who I was and why I was calling before he cut me off and told me to refer to engineer and not to contact him again. I tried again for someone else later, did not make it past receptionist. As you wish. I took the revised submittal and filed it in the back of the job file and moved on. I wasn't needed for the rest and I had other things to do, plus school. Fast forward almost 2 years, now going to college, still working for my folks as needed. Construction complete, get called in for startup. Goes smoothly as it should, and the countdown to destruction begins. I think the first one went after about 3 months. Only made it that long because those pumps are very well built. Emergency ship in a replacement. The second one a week or 3 after, then another, and another, then the replacements start failing. The whole time, these are being invoiced including emergency shipping and having to run out to start them up every time. They have no choice, this is the model the pads were cast for and the piping run for. You can't directly substitute something else, like, say, the correct pumps. Then it gets really fun. They start returning the burnt out units for warranty. The factory starts receiving these and tearing them down for failure analysis. I told our representative straight up that they were being run way outside their design point knowingly, and he was not amused. Warranty is denied and they are billed for the diagnostic time and shipping. The manufacturer was in Germany, by the way. These units are neither small nor light. Plus these are being shipped as emergency orders. So it's not cheap. Warranties officially denied to the buyer. We tell them in no uncertain terms that this isn't a problem with the units. This is now almost a year after the plant was due to come online. Now it has really hit the fan. The city council gets involved because this is a municipal plant. Lawsuits are threatened and a council meeting is scheduled to discuss further action. I marked the day and arranged with my teachers to take a few days off. I drove 3.5 hours to see my parents, and to visit their filing cabinet. Right, where I left it, I found the revised submittal, and a quick trip to a local copy shop provided some wonderful blown-up posters of said submittal as well as the proofs behind it. The next day, I drove another 2.5 hours up to said city, had a lovely meatball sandwich at a restaurant right across the street from the council building and showed up to the council meeting. I even dressed up nice for the occasion. I didn't say anything to anyone, I just sat in the back in my chair with my rolled up posters next to me and waited. It took about 40 minutes. The council finally brings up the plant. Guess who comes up to testify in front of the council? It's the engineer. He goes on for about 10 minutes talking bad about our company and how we are denying the warranties. Basically states that the problem is due to the substitution and that our pumps were substandard. This is a loss now counted in the millions between the downtime and replacement costs and rejected warranties, labor, etc. The council agrees on everything he said. He sits down and the council starts discussing among themselves. This is my turn. I stand up, approach the podium, and wait for them to notice me. It doesn't take long as I'm a teenager in a city council meeting. I introduce myself and unroll the posters. Hi. I'm from the company that was just bad-mouthed. Before you proceed any further, you should probably have a look at this, which is the revised submittal I sent to the engineer prior to the initial bid. You'll note the date. Also, attached you'll find the supporting calculations, relevant drawings from the original plans, and the recommendation of a larger suitable unit. You'll also see the fax acknowledgement sheet, showing it was received by his office. Immediately after sending that, I contacted the engineer directly and advised him of these issues. He declined. I was told outright to keep my nose out of things I didn't understand and to leave engineering to the adults. He was well aware the units would self-destruct if run at this point. After that, I called your planner, who refused to listen, and referred me back to the engineer. If you'd like, I'd be more than willing to contact our phone provider, so they can verify that fax and those calls were placed. I'm grinning at this point and I'm not holding back the evil one bit. I'm sure I looked like a crazy person, but I couldn't help it and I also didn't care. They all were completely silent. So yes, the warranties are void as all of the units were operated well beyond their design point. I still stand by the revised submittal, so feel free to call when you're ready. I'll leave these here. Still completely silent. The entire council looks like I just dropped my pants and mooned them. Then after a few seconds, one of the ladies on the council said, "Thank you. You can go." I left my posters on the podium, turned and walked, made full eye contact with the engineer as long as I could with that same grin. He looked like he was probably going to explode, but I didn't stick around to check. I stopped by to give my folks a hug on the way back to school, and that was the end of my involvement. No idea what happened to the engineer or planner, but the city paid every invoice in full without another sound. They had to continue to purchase replacement after replacement to limp it along while simultaneously trying to refit the plant. They finally got it fixed after about another year, but by that time, I can't even imagine how far over the projected estimate they were. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.